Do14 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of C7 in a depression. Bladder 11 is 1.5 cm lateral to the posterior midline, below the spinous process of T1. Going to find the inferior border of T1 and come directly lateral to it on the height of the paraspinal muscle.
Small intestine 15 is located 2 cm lateral to the inferior border of C7. Locate your C7, use the medial border of the spine of scapula to dictate your 3 cm mark, move out 2 cm to find this point.
Do10 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of T6. Rin21 is on the anterior midline at the manubrium, midway between Rin22 and Rin20. Rin20 is on the anterior midline, level with the first intercostal space and the sternum. Rin15 is 7 cm superior to the centre of the umbilicus, on the midline. Rin16 is on the midline at the xiphisternal junction. Lung 1 is 1 cm inferior and slightly lateral to lung 2. To find the 1 cm, find the width of an intercostal space close to the sternum and transfer it over. Kidney 25 is in the second intercostal space, 2 cm lateral from the midline. Kidney 19 is level with Rin 12, 0.5 cm lateral to the midline, 4 cm superior to the centre of the umbilicus. Kidney 20 is 0.5 cm lateral to the midline at the level of Rin 13, which is 5 cm superior to the centre of the umbilicus. Liver 14 is 4 cm lateral to the midline in the 6th intercostal space. When you locate this point, make sure you are in the intercostal space, not on the rib. Stomach 12 is posterior to the midpoint of the superior border of the clavicle. Frequently there's a nice little notch there.
Stomach 10 is located midway between stomach 9 and stomach 11. It's on the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, so be sure to palpate down the muscle to find this point. Stomach 11 is located just superior to the medial end of the clavicle. It's in between the sternal and the clavicular heads of the sternocleidomastoid. To bring these into relief, ask the person to turn their head sideways. We can find the sternal and the clavicular heads of the sternocleidomastoid, and here's the depression for stomach 11. But be aware of the fact that when the person turns their head back to the front, the dip will move laterally slightly. Large intestine 18 is located on the side of the neck on a contour with a laryngeal prominence. It's in between the two bellies of the sternocleidomastoid. To bring the two bellies into relief, have the person turn their head against resistance. It becomes quite easy to see the sternal and the clavicular bellies of this muscle. Locate your point in between the two bellies and then have them relax their neck again. Large intestine 20 is located in the nasolabial groove, level with the midpoint of the ala nasi. The ala nasi is the nostril, so find the superior border of the nostril, the inferior border of the nostril, hence the midpoint, and come out into the nasolabial groove. Bladder 10 is located 1.3 sun lateral to do 15. It's 4.5 sun from do 15 to the mastoid process. So divide this area into 3 and just come a little closer to the posterior midline. You'll be on the lateral edge of the trapezius muscle. Bladder 7 is located in relation to the midpoint between the glabella and the base of the occiput. It's 1.5 sun lateral to the midline at this level. To get your 1.5 sun, take the distance from the anterior midline to stomach 8, which is 4.5 sun, and divide this into 3. This will give you your 1.5 sun. Extra point seal hall is on the anterior midline on the glabella, directly between the medial ends of the eyebrows. Large intestine 20 is located in the nasolabial groove, level with the midpoint of the ala nasi. The ala nasi is the nostril. So find the superior border of the nostril, the inferior border of the nostril, hence the midpoint, and come out into the nasolabial groove.
Ren 23 is on the anterior midline in a depression directly above the hyoid bone. Ren 22 is on the anterior midline in the suprasterna fossa, 5 fens superior to the suprasternal notch. Pericardium 6 is on the flexor aspect of the forearm. It's 2 sun proximal from pericardium 7, and it's in between the two tendons palmaris longus and flexor carpal radialis. Large intestine 1 is at the radial nail point of the index finger. I'm going to be looking at the proximal and radial borders, looking and feeling for the flare of the bone, looking at where the nail bed is and putting my point in. Large intestine 4, you're going to find the length of the second metacarpal bone. So running your finger down, finding the base, making sure that you're not actually on the carpal bones themselves, finding the midpoint of that shaft of bone, coming between the first and second metacarpals, nearer to the second than the first in the muscle.
Sanjiao points on the forearm are best located with the arm laying flat on the bed and the elbow turned outwards. To find Sanjiao 5, come 2 sun proximal to Sanjiao 4, in between the radius and the ulna. You should be on the radial side of the tendon of extensor digitorum communis. If the person wiggles their fingers, this tendon will come into relief. Lung 7 is located 1.5 sun proximal to lung 9. It's located just a little lateral to the main line running from lung 9 to lung 5, in a cleft between the tendons of abductor pollicis longus and brachioradialis. It's located just at the base of the flare of the styloid process of the radius. In this position, the point is just about visible on the corner of the arm. If you locate the point too radial, it's falling onto the yang surface of the arm. Large intestine 8 is located 8 sun proximal from large intestine 5 going towards large intestine 11. Palpate for a nice groove in the muscle. Large intestine 11 is located at the midpoint between lung 5 and the prominence of the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Typically, this is at the end of the transverse cubital crease when the arm is fully flexed.